I'm Valerie, 58 years old, and I never thought I'd be lying here struggling to reach my pain medication after hip replacement surgery. My daughter Jessica and her husband Andrew agreed to help me recover after I covered all the expenses. I trusted them. But today, when I simply asked for a glass of water, my own daughter screamed in my face, "We are not your servants." Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button to find out what shocking betrayal I discovered next. After my husband died when Jessica was 15, it was just the two of us against the world. I worked 2 jobs to keep our little family afloat, often coming home exhausted, but still making time to help with her homework. Those were difficult years, but Jessica and I grew incredibly close. I skipped vacations, drove an old car that broke down regularly, and even put off treating my growing back pain so I could save every penny for her education. When Jessica graduated from college, I felt like all my sacrifices had been worthwhile. She found a good job at a marketing firm, and I was so proud watching her build her career. Then she met Andrew at a company event 3 years ago. He was charming and seemed to adore her. I was happy that my daughter had found someone who appeared to love her as much as I did. Their wedding was small but beautiful. I spent months planning it, wanting everything to be perfect for my only child. When they started talking about buying a house a year later, I didn't hesitate to offer help. I had been saving for retirement for years, living frugally, even after Jessica moved out. I gave them $75,000 from my retirement fund for their down payment. The joy on Jessica's face when they got the keys to their new home made it all worthwhile. "Mom, you've done so much for me," Jessica said, hugging me tightly at their housewarming party. "I'll always be there for you, too." I believed her. Why wouldn't I? She was my daughter, my whole world. I imagined Sunday dinners together, holidays filled with laughter, and maybe even grandchildren someday. A continuing family bond that would grow stronger with time. Then 6 months ago, my hip pain became unbearable. Years of working on my feet had taken their toll. My doctor recommended a full hip replacement, explaining that the recovery would be challenging. I would need help with basic tasks for at least a month after surgery. "Jessica," I said during one of our weekly phone calls, "I need to talk to you about something important." I explained my situation, feeling vulnerable, having to ask for help. Jessica was quiet for a long time before responding. "We're really busy with work right now, Mom," she finally said. "And our house isn't set up for someone recovering from surgery." "I understand," I told her, trying to hide my disappointment. "I can look into hiring a nurse." That's when Jessica suggested an alternative. "What if Andrew and I stayed at your house instead? That way you'd be in your own space. But we'd need money for a housekeeper since we'd be taking time off work and you'd need to stock the fridge." Relief washed over me. Of course my daughter wanted to help. She was just worried about the practicalities. I immediately agreed to her terms, grateful that I wouldn't have to recover among strangers. "Thank you, sweetheart," I said. "You don't know how much this means to me." I transferred $3,000 to Jessica's account for the housekeeper and filled my pantry and freezer with easy-to-prepare meals. I prepared the guest room for them, buying new sheets and towels. I wanted them to be comfortable while they helped me. The surgery was scheduled for a Monday morning in early spring. I felt nervous, but hopeful. My daughter would be there for me, just as I had always been there for her. The surgery went well, according to my doctor. I spent 2 days in the hospital before being discharged on Wednesday afternoon. Jessica was supposed to pick me up at 2 o'clock, but she didn't arrive until almost 4, explaining that she had gotten caught in a meeting that ran long. "Sorry, Mom," she said, barely looking up from her phone as I was wheeled out to the car. "Work's been crazy." The drive home was quiet. I was still groggy from medication and in considerable pain whenever we hit a bump in the road. I had asked Jessica to prepare my bedroom downstairs before I came home, since the doctor advised against climbing stairs initially. When we arrived, I discovered she hadn't done it. "Oh, I completely forgot," Jessica said, looking annoyed rather than apologetic. "Andrew was supposed to help with that, but he had to work late last night." I tried not to show my disappointment as I watched Jessica hastily make up the sofa bed in the living room. She tossed the sheets on haphazardly, nothing like the careful preparation I'd made for their room. "Where is Andrew?" I asked, easing myself onto the poorly made bed, wincing from the effort. "He'll be here after work," Jessica replied, already walking away. "He couldn't take the whole day off." I spent that afternoon alone while Jessica talked loudly on her phone in the kitchen, apparently handling work issues remotely. I could hear her laughing and chatting, but she didn't check on me once. When I needed to use the bathroom, I had to call her name several times before she came, sighing heavily as she helped me up. "This is really inconvenient, Mom," she muttered. "I'm in the middle of something important." Andrew arrived around 7 that evening. He briefly stuck his head into the living room. "Hey, Valerie," he said. It struck me that he never called me Mom like some sons-in-law might. "Hope you're feeling better. I brought Chinese food for dinner." I heard them serving themselves in the kitchen, their voices low but audible. No one brought me a plate. After 30 minutes of listening to their chopsticks against plates and casual conversation, I realized they had no intention of including me. "Jessica," I called weakly, "could I have some dinner, please?" There was a pause before Jessica appeared at the doorway. "Oh, right. I'll get you something." She returned with a small plate of cold food, placing it on the side table without a word, before returning to the kitchen. I heard Andrew complain, "This is going to mess up our whole vacation schedule. We were supposed to go to Miami next month." "I know," Jessica responded, "but we're getting paid for this at least." Their words stung, but I told myself they were just adjusting to the situation. It couldn't be easy for them to put their lives on hold for me. I ate a few bites of the cold food before setting it aside, my appetite gone. That night, I needed help getting to the bathroom again. I pressed the small bell the hospital had given me to signal for assistance. I pressed it 3 times before Andrew appeared, looking disheveled and irritated. "It's 11 at night," he said. "Can't this wait until morning?" "I'm sorry," I replied, embarrassed. "I need to use the bathroom." He helped me up roughly, his movements impatient. I felt like a burden and inconvenience in my own home. After that, I tried to limit my requests for help, even if it meant being uncomfortable. The next morning, I woke up hungry, having barely eaten the night before. I could hear Jessica and Andrew in the kitchen, the smell of bacon and coffee making my stomach growl. I waited for one of them to bring me breakfast, but no one came. Finally, I used my walker to slowly make my way to the kitchen. Jessica and Andrew looked up in surprise when I appeared in the doorway. "Mom, you shouldn't be walking around by yourself," Jessica said, though she made no move to help me. "I was hungry," I explained, noticing they had made a full breakfast for themselves. "And no one brought me anything. We thought you were still sleeping," Andrew said, turning his attention back to his phone. I lowered myself carefully into a chair, watching as they finished their meal without offering to make me anything. I eventually asked Jessica directly if she could make me some toast. "Sure," she replied with a sigh, as if I'd asked for something extraordinarily difficult. Later that day, I discovered that the meals I had prepared and frozen before my surgery were being eaten by Jessica and Andrew for their lunches and dinners. They weren't cooking for me as agreed. Instead, they were helping themselves to my food while I made do with toast and cereal that I could prepare myself despite the pain. As the day wore on, I noticed other concerning behaviors. My living room had been transformed into their entertainment center with snack wrappers and empty soda cans littering the coffee table. When I mentioned it, Jessica rolled her eyes. "We'll clean up later, Mom. Stop being so controlling." I retreated back to my makeshift bed, feeling both physical and emotional pain washing over me. Something was very wrong with this situation, but I was too dependent on their help to confront it directly. At least not yet. On the third day after surgery, I woke up at 6 a.m. with searing pain radiating from my hip. My pain medication was scheduled for 5:30, but no one had come to give it to me. The small bell sat on the side table, and I rang it repeatedly. No response. After 30 minutes of growing agony, I had no choice but to try reaching the medication myself. Using my walker, I inched my way toward the kitchen where my pills were kept. Every step was excruciating, and I had to stop several times to catch my breath and wait for waves of pain to subside. When I finally reached the kitchen, I found my medication bottle on a high shelf that I couldn't reach without standing on tiptoes, something impossible in my condition. Jessica and Andrew had put it there despite knowing I couldn't reach it. With no other option, I made my painful way to the guest bedroom where they were sleeping. The door was closed. I knocked weakly, then more firmly when there was no answer. "Jessica, Andrew, I need my medication," I called. Silence. I opened the door to find them both sound asleep. Jessica's sleep mask firmly in place, Andrew snoring loudly. The sight filled me with disbelief. They had promised to help me take my medication on schedule, knowing how important it was for my recovery. "Jessica," I said more loudly, reaching out to gently shake her shoulder. She startled awake, pulling off her sleep mask with an angry motion. What time is it?" "It's past 6, I explained. "I needed my pain medication at 5:30. It's on the top shelf in the kitchen and I can't reach it." Jessica groaned dramatically. "Mom, we were sleeping. Couldn't this have waited?" "No, it couldn't," I replied, my voice shaking slightly. "I'm in a lot of pain." Andrew rolled over, pulling a pillow over his head. "Just get her the pills so we can go back to sleep," he muttered. Jessica stomped past me to the kitchen, not even checking to see if I needed help walking back. I followed slowly, each step a reminder of how vulnerable I was and how little they seemed to care. When I finally made it back to the kitchen, Jessica was standing there with the pill bottle in one hand, a look of pure annoyance on her face. "Here," she said, thrusting the bottle and a glass of water toward me. "Next time, maybe don't schedule your medication for the crack of dawn." I took the pills with shaking hands. "The doctor set the schedule, not me. It's important that I take them at regular intervals." Jessica wasn't listening. She was already heading back to her bedroom. "Whatever. I'm going back to sleep." Left alone in the kitchen, I looked around and noticed the state of my usually tidy home. Dishes were piled in the sink, some with food still caked on them. Empty takeout containers littered the counters. Jessica and Andrew had been ordering food despite the fully stocked refrigerator I had prepared. I slowly made my way back to my sofa bed, the pain medication not yet taking effect. As I passed the guest room, I heard Jessica and Andrew talking. "This is ridiculous," Jessica was saying. "She's acting like we're her personal servants." "At least we're getting paid," Andrew replied. "And free food. Plus, we haven't had to pay for our apartment utilities this week." I froze, my heart pounding. Were they really viewing my need for help after surgery as an opportunity to save money? "True," Jessica continued. "And she's not even noticing that we've been ordering out every night with her credit card." Perks of taking care of Mom. Andrew laughed. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I had given them money specifically to hire help money they were obviously pocketing. I had stocked the refrigerator with food they were ignoring in favor of expensive takeout on my credit card. Later that day, while they were both out claiming to be running errands, I noticed shopping bags in the guest room, designer clothes with tags still on them, a new gaming console that Andrew had set up on my bedroom TV, expensive bottles of wine in my kitchen that I certainly hadn't purchased. They were using this situation, using me for their own gain. The realization was like a physical blow. I thought about the $75,000 I had given them for their house down payment, about the countless times I had supported Jessica financially and emotionally, and this was how they repaid me. That evening, when they returned from their errands, with no groceries but new shopping bags, I asked about the housekeeper I had paid for. "Oh, we decided against hiring someone," Jessica said casually. "We figured we could handle it ourselves." "But I gave you $3,000 for that," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Consider it compensation for our time," Andrew interjected. "We're missing work to be here, you know." I wanted to respond, but the words caught in my throat. The betrayal was too fresh, too painful. Instead, I retreated back to my sofa, pretending to sleep, as I listened to them talk about their plans to go out for dinner again, using my credit card, no doubt. A week after my surgery, I was making some progress physically, but the situation with Jessica and Andrew was becoming unbearable. I hadn't confronted them about the credit card charges or missing money yet, partly because I was still processing the betrayal myself. That morning, I needed to take a shower. The doctor had said I could do so a week after surgery, but I would need help. I called for Jessica, who was watching television in the living room while I was confined to my sofa bed. "Jessica, could you help me take a shower today? The doctor said it's okay now, but I need someone nearby in case I lose my balance." She didn't even look away from the screen. "Can't you wait until later? My show is on?" "I've been waiting for a week," I replied, trying to keep the frustration from my voice. "I really need to feel clean again." With a dramatic sigh, Jessica turned off the TV and stood up. "Fine. Let's get this over with." She helped me to the bathroom reluctantly, her movements rough and impatient. When I asked her to help me undress, her expression turned to disgust. "Seriously, you can't do that yourself." "The doctor said not to bend or twist," I explained. "I need help with my socks and pants." "This is ridiculous," Jessica muttered, but she helped me undress and get into the shower chair we had rented for my recovery. As I began to wash myself, Jessica stood by the door scrolling through her phone, clearly annoyed at having to be there. When I dropped the soap and asked for help retrieving it, something inside her seemed to snap. "For God's sake!" she shouted, her voice echoing off the bathroom tiles. "We are not your servants!" The words hit me like physical blows. I sat there naked and vulnerable as my own daughter continued her tirade. "Do you have any idea how much we've given up to be here? Our lives are on hold because you couldn't just hire a nurse." Andrew appeared at the bathroom door, drawn by the shouting. "What's going on?" "Mom expects us to wait on her hand and foot," Jessica said, gesturing wildly at me. "She can't even pick up her own soap." Andrew's face hardened. "We've been here for a week already. We've sacrificed our vacation time, our social lives, everything. And it's never enough for you, is it, Valerie?" I sat there, water running down my body, feeling more exposed and humiliated than I ever had in my life. "You've always been like this," Jessica continued, her voice dripping with resentment. "Always making me feel guilty, like I owe you something just because you raised me." "I gave up everything for you," I whispered, shock making it hard to find my voice. "That was your choice," Jessica shouted. I didn't ask to be born. I didn't ask you to give up dating after Dad died. I didn't ask you to work 2 jobs. That was all you trying to make yourself into some kind of martyr. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. All those years of sacrifice, of putting her needs before my own, had been recast as some sort of manipulation in her mind. And that money you gave us for the house? Jessica continued, her face contorted with anger. That was just you paying me back for ruining my childhood by making me your emotional support after Dad died. You owed me that money. The shower water had gone cold, but I barely noticed. Every word from my daughter's mouth was like ice in my veins anyway. I never asked for anything in return, I said quietly. Oh, please, Jessica scoffed. The constant phone calls, the guilt trips when we don't visit, and now this whole invalid act. You're perfectly capable of more than you're letting on. You just like having us at your beck and call. Andrew nodded in agreement. We've put our lives on hold long enough. We're not getting paid nearly enough for this. That's when it hit me fully. They weren't here out of love or duty. They were here because they thought I was paying them. The money for the housekeeper, the stocked refrigerator, even the $75,000 for their house. None of it was seen as gifts or help. In their minds, it was payment for services, and apparently I wasn't paying enough. In that moment, something broke inside me, but something else became very clear. The people standing before me were not the family I thought I had. They were strangers who saw me only as a source of financial support. Get out, I whispered, then louder. Get out of my bathroom. Get out of my house. Jessica laughed incredulously. You can't be serious. You can't even get out of that shower chair without help. I'll manage, I said, finding strength in my growing anger. But I want you both out of my house today. Mom, you're being ridiculous, Jessica started, but I cut her off. I'm not being ridiculous. I'm finally seeing clearly. Now get out so I can dress myself. They left the bathroom still arguing that I was overreacting. I heard them in the hallway, Jessica insisting I'd calm down eventually, that I always did this when I didn't get my way. But they didn't know that something fundamental had changed. I was done being used. After they left the bathroom, I faced the daunting task of getting out of the shower chair and dressing myself. The pain was intense, but my determination was stronger. I had raised Jessica as a single mother. I had worked multiple jobs and kept a household running. I could certainly get myself out of a shower. It took nearly 45 minutes of careful movements and several breaks to manage what would normally take 5 minutes. By the time I emerged from the bathroom dressed and using my walker, I was exhausted but resolute. I found Jessica and Andrew in the living room acting as if nothing had happened. You're being dramatic, Mom, Jessica said when she saw me. We're just tired and said some things we didn't mean. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her, and realized I no longer recognized the person she had become. Or perhaps this person had always been there, hidden beneath the surface. I want you both to leave, I said firmly. Today. Now. Andrew laughed dismissively. And who's going to take care of you? You can barely walk. I'll figure it out, I replied. But it won't be you two. Jessica approached me, adopting the condescending tone one might use with a child. Mom, you're upset. I get it. But you're not thinking clearly. You need us. What I need, I said, my voice growing stronger with each word, is to not be treated like a burden in my own home. What I need is to not have my generosity thrown back in my face. I took a deep breath and continued, the words pouring out after days of holding them in. I worked 60-hour weeks when you were growing up, Jessica. I missed my own mother's funeral because I couldn't afford to take time off work and still pay for your braces. I wore the same winter coat for 15 years so you could have new clothes each school year." Jessica rolled her eyes. "Here we go again with the martyr routine." "It's not a routine," I shouted, surprising even myself with the volume. "It's my life. I chose to make those sacrifices because I loved you. I never once regretted them or held them over your head." I turned to Andrew. "And you. I welcomed you into our family. I gave you $75,000 for your house. Money I had saved for 20 years, a third of my retirement fund. Not because I owed anyone anything, but because I wanted to help." Andrew at least had the decency to look uncomfortable, but Jessica wasn't backing down. "We didn't ask you for that money," she insisted. "You didn't have to ask. That's what family does. They help each other without being asked. But clearly your definition of family is very different from mine." I moved to the kitchen, my walker making a steady rhythm on the hardwood floors. I picked up my purse from the counter and removed my wallet. "You'll find that I've already canceled the credit card you've been using," I said, watching their expressions change. "Yes, I know about that. I know about the takeout meals, the shopping sprees, all of it." Their silence was confirmation enough. "I've also decided to make some changes to my will." I continued, the words tasting bitter but necessary. "This house, which I had planned to leave to you, Jessica, will now go to St. Jude's Children's Hospital." "You can't do that," Jessica exclaimed, genuine panic crossing her face for the first time. "I can and I will," I replied calmly. "It's my house bought with my money, maintained with my labor, and I choose not to give it to people who see me as nothing more than a bank account." "This is insane," Andrew interjected. "You're making a huge mistake." "The mistake was thinking you two cared about me," I responded. "Now I want you to pack your things and leave within the hour. If you're not gone by then, I'll call the police and report you for elder abuse and credit card fraud." Jessica's face went pale. "You wouldn't." "Try me," I said, meeting her gaze steadily. For a moment, we stood in a tense standoff, mother and daughter, now adversaries. Then Jessica stormed off to the guest room, Andrew following close behind. I could hear drawers being yanked open, angry muttering, the sounds of hasty packing. I lowered myself carefully onto a kitchen chair and picked up my phone. I called my neighbor Susan, a retired nurse who had offered to help, before I asked Jessica. "Susan." "It's Valerie. I hate to ask, but I'm in a bit of a situation. Could you come over in about an hour?" Susan agreed immediately, and I felt a wave of relief knowing that genuine help was on the way. Jessica and Andrew emerged from the guest room with their suitcases 20 minutes later. Jessica paused in the kitchen doorway, her expression a mix of anger and disbelief. "I can't believe you're doing this," she said, "after everything we've done for you." "What exactly have you done for me, Jessica?" I asked quietly. "Besides spending my money and making me feel like a burden." She had no answer to that. Andrew was already heading for the door, clearly eager to be gone. "This isn't over," Jessica said as a parting shot. "You're making a huge mistake." "No," I replied. "I'm finally correcting one." The sound of the front door slamming echoed through the house, followed by a silence that felt both empty and peaceful. I was alone in pain and facing weeks of difficult recovery. But for the first time since my surgery, I felt like I could breathe freely in my own home. After Jessica and Andrew left, I sat in the kitchen for a long time processing what had happened. The house felt eerily quiet, but it was a peaceful quiet, free from tension and resentment. Susan arrived an hour later bringing groceries and a genuinely caring presence. "Oh, Valerie," she said, taking in my exhausted state. "Let's get you comfortable first, then you can tell me what happened." Susan helped me back to my sofa bed and made sure I was properly positioned with pillows supporting my hip. She brought me a glass of water and my pain medication, which was well past due. As the medication began to take effect, I explained the situation. "I knew something wasn't right," Susan said, shaking her head. "I saw them coming and going at all hours, bringing in shopping bags, but never any groceries or medical supplies." Susan offered to stay with me for a few days until I could arrange for professional help. As she began cleaning up the mess Jessica and Andrew had left behind, she made a disturbing discovery. "Valerie, there are a lot of receipts here," Susan called from the kitchen. "And they all seem to be charged to your credit card." I asked her to bring them to me, and what I saw made my blood run cold. Hundreds of dollars in restaurant charges, designer clothes, electronics, even a reservation for a weekend getaway at a luxury resort dated for the following month. "I need to check my credit card statements," I said, reaching for my laptop. With Susan's help, I logged into my online banking account. The charges were even worse than the receipts suggested. In just 1 week, Jessica and Andrew had racked up over $4,000 on my credit card. "This is theft," Susan said firmly. "You should report this." But there was more. As Susan continued cleaning, she found bank statements that weren't mine in the guest room. Curious, she brought them to me. "I'm not sure if I should be showing you these," she said hesitantly, "but I think you need to see them." The statements were from Jessica and Andrew's joint account. What shocked me wasn't just the balance, which was far higher than it should have been given their jobs, but several large deposits labeled as loan proceeds. Why would they need loans when I gave them so much for their house? I wondered aloud. Susan helped me dig deeper. We found loan applications in my name, complete with what appeared to be my forged signature. There were 3 different loans totaling nearly $30,000, all taken out in the past 2 months. "They've stolen your identity," Susan gasped. "Valerie, you need to call the police." I felt sick to my stomach. This wasn't just taking advantage of my generosity. This was criminal activity. My own daughter had stolen my identity to take out fraudulent loans. As we continued searching, we found even more evidence of their betrayal. A notebook in Jessica's handwriting detailed their financial plan, which included taking over my house once I became too old to manage alone. There were notes about convincing me to add their names to my deed, about accessing my retirement accounts, even about selling my possessions once she's in a home. The systematic nature of their plan shook me to my core. This wasn't opportunistic. It was calculated. They had been planning to strip me of my assets for months, perhaps years. "I can't believe this," I whispered, tears finally coming after hours of shock. "My own daughter." Susan sat beside me, holding my hand as I cried. "I'm so sorry, Valerie, but you need to protect yourself now." She was right. Between sobs, I asked her to call the police and my bank. I needed to report the identity theft and credit card fraud immediately. 2 officers arrived within the hour. They were kind but professional as they took my statement and collected the evidence we had found. They explained that identity theft cases, especially those involving family members, were unfortunately common. "We see this more often than you'd think," the female officer said gently. "Especially with elderly parents." "I'm not elderly," I protested weakly. "I'm only 58. She smiled sympathetically. "To them, you're a target. That's all that matters." The officers recommended I contact a lawyer as well as my bank. They took the loan documents and credit card statements as evidence, promising to follow up soon. After they left, Susan helped me make more calls to my bank to freeze my accounts, to the credit bureaus, to place fraud alerts to my credit card company, to dispute the charges. Each call was exhausting but necessary. "What about Jessica?" Susan asked gently when we finished. "Will you press charges?" The question broke my heart all over again. Would I send my own daughter to jail? The person I had raised, loved, sacrificed for, I don't know. I admitted, "I need time to think." That night, alone in my home with Susan sleeping in the guest room, I faced the hardest truth of all: the daughter I thought I had didn't exist. The loving child I remembered had become a person capable of cold calculation and betrayal. Or perhaps she had always been that way, and I had been too blinded by love to see it. Either way, I knew our relationship would never be the same. The discovery of their plan had changed everything. There was no going back. The weeks that followed were some of the most difficult of my life emotionally, even more than physically. I hired a professional caregiver named Maria, who came daily to help with my recovery. I also engaged a lawyer, Mr. Hartman, to help me navigate the legal implications of Jessica and Andrew's actions. "Identity theft is a serious crime," Mr. Hartman explained during our first meeting. "Especially when it involves this amount of money. They could face significant jail time." The thought still made my stomach churn. "They're my family," I said weakly. "Family who committed fraud." He reminded me gently, "You need to protect yourself, Valerie. This likely isn't the end of their attempts." He was right. Jessica had been calling and texting incessantly since I kicked them out, alternating between anger, pleading, and manipulation. "You're making a huge mistake." One message read, "You need us." "I can't believe you'd turn your back on your own daughter," said another. Then, "We were just trying to help you plan for your future." I didn't respond to any of them. Mr. Hartman advised against it, and honestly, I didn't know what to say. How do you respond to someone who has betrayed you so completely? The police investigation progressed. They found that Jessica and Andrew had opened multiple credit accounts in my name beyond the loans we initially discovered. The total fraud amounted to over $50,000. "We have enough evidence to press charges," Detective Reynolds told me during a follow-up visit, "but the decision is yours." I spent days agonizing over the choice. On one hand, Jessica was still my daughter. The thought of her in jail made me physically ill. On the other hand, her actions had been deliberate and calculated. This wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment. In the end, I decided to press charges. It wasn't about revenge. It was about accountability and protecting myself. The detective assured me that first-time offenders often received probation rather than jail time, especially if they made restitution. 2 months after my surgery, Jessica and Andrew were arrested and charged with identity theft, credit card fraud, and forgery. The news made the local paper, bringing my private shame into public view. Neighbors I had known for years looked at me with pity. Friends called with awkward condolences as if someone had died. In a way, something had dyed my image of my family, my trust, my sense of security in my relationships. Jessica and Andrew eventually accepted a plea deal that required full restitution, 5 years of probation, and community service. They avoided jail time, which brought me a small measure of relief. The court also issued a restraining order preventing them from contacting me or coming near my home. 6 months after surgery, my hip had healed well, but my heart was still broken. I decided to join a support group for victims of family financial abuse, discovering that my story was sadly common. Many elderly parents had been exploited by adult children or other relatives. "You're not alone in this," the group facilitator assured us during my first meeting. "And it's not your fault. Trusting your family isn't a crime." In the group, I met Marion, who had been swindled out of her life savings by her son and George, whose nephew had stolen his identity. Their stories helped me feel less alone, less foolish for having trusted so completely. I also began volunteering at a local senior center, helping other older adults learn about protecting themselves from scams and financial abuse. Turning my pain into purpose gave me a sense of control and meaning. "You've helped me see the warning signs," one woman told me after a workshop. "I think my grandson might be trying something similar." It felt good to know my experience might prevent someone else from going through the same thing. A year after my surgery, I received a letter from Jessica. It had been forwarded through my lawyer as she still wasn't allowed to contact me directly. "Dear Mom," it began. "I've been in therapy for the past 6 months trying to understand why I did what I did. I know nothing I say can undo the hurt I've caused, but I want you to know I'm truly sorry." She went on to explain that she had always resented the sacrifices I had made for her, feeling burdened by what she perceived as emotional debt. The therapist had helped her recognize that her actions were a misguided attempt to balance the scales in her mind. "I know now that love isn't a transaction," she wrote. "You gave freely to me because you loved me, not because you expected repayment. I wish I had understood that sooner." The letter concluded with a request for forgiveness, but no request to resume contact. She seemed to understand that some bridges once burned cannot be rebuilt. I sat with the letter for days, reading it over and over. Part of me wanted to believe in her transformation to welcome my daughter back into my life. But a larger part had learned caution the hard way. In the end, I wrote back a brief note. "I forgive you, Jessica. I hope you find peace and happiness in your life." I meant it sincerely, but I also maintained my boundaries. Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting or exposing myself to further harm. Today, 2 years after that fateful confrontation in my bathroom, my life looks very different. I've created a new family of friends from my support group and volunteer work. I've updated my will, leaving my assets to charities that help victims of elder abuse. I've installed security systems in my home and become vigilant about protecting my financial information. I still think about Jessica every day. I still love her. But I've learned that loving someone doesn't mean allowing them to harm you. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do both for yourself and the other person is to establish firm boundaries. The most important lesson I've learned is that while family bonds are precious, self-respect is essential. No one, not even your child, has the right to treat you as less than worthy of dignity and respect. Sometimes the people we love most are the ones who hurt us most deeply. But I've learned that loving yourself enough to walk away can be the first step toward true healing. Have you ever had to make a difficult decision to protect yourself from someone you love? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please subscribe to hear more stories of resilience and recovery. Remember, it's never too late to stand up for yourself and reclaim your power. Thank you for listening to my journey.